Hello, today we are going to compare the Python integrated development environments PyCharm Community and Visual Studio Code with the Python extension. I have both of them installed. I have a Python source code project. Let's create a virtual environment. So I searched on the internet Python venv. This is a module that's built into the standard library from Python. This is how you invoke it. It will create a directory. The usual name for that directory is .venv. So let's create it like that. A common name for the target directory is .venv. So in the current directory, that would be Python 3 in my case, -m venv, and then the name of the directory, which is .venv. Okay, so it created this hidden directory. Let's now open PyCharm Community. Okay, let's close the previously opened projects. Close project. I've selected the directory. I just copy paste the full path to the directory. Go OK. Says, do I want to trust? Yes. It already shows me the readme.md. And now let's look at the entry point that we're going to test, which is inside of the directory setup, craft bootstrap.py. Let's see the structure of the file. There's the project tool window, which shows as a tree view the directories and files in the current directory. And we're going to also use the structure tool window, structure Alt7. And let's see what's in here. So there's a class which is called craft bootstrap and 3 free functions. I have collapsed these entities, so the class and 4 free functions. I can see that outside of these 4, there's the import block of source code lines, these 3 source code lines with a return early, and then the if name equals main. I put 2 breakpoints, one inside of if name equals main and one at the first if. Let's debug. The default selection is current file, which is okay. Okay, let's look at the debugger, step over, step into my code. Very, very interesting. And step out. Let's go step into my code. Okay, so now it just looks at the definitions of the identifiers, doesn't descend into the methods, doesn't execute those. Okay, and now it's outside of the 5, so 1 class and 4 functions. It's in the if name equals main. I keep using step into my code Alt-Shift F7. There are no parameters. We should provide the parameter ---- prefix. So let's fix this issue. For that, we'll need to create a configuration for the debugger. New Python. We want to run a script indeed. Inside the directory setup, craft bootstrap. OK. And the command line is like this. The parameters. Okay. Let's start the debugger again. It opened at it stopped paused at the first breakpoint. Let's go to the next breakpoint, which is resume program F9. And in here, let's start stepping into my code. Okay, so this is a command line parser, similar to GNU getopt probably. GNU style ---- and then long command line parameter name. Okay, and now it's going to parse the args. Does not step into this source code because it's not ours. Let's look where the source code is. So it's from the argparse Python standard library. Okay. Set up, probably our function, this one. Again, step into my code, very useful. The args, there's the prefix craft root argument. We have it available in here. Step into my code. Okay, it wants to create the directory, which is ~/craft root, correct? Write something. This is the console. Select the version of Qt you want to use. Okay. So it's going to step very, very deeply inside of our source code. It's going to step into all of the source code lines that we wrote that are part of this craft Python project. Okay, so it did print. Select the version. I want Qt 5. Now it's at input, waiting for me to do something. Default is Qt 5, so if I just press enter, what will it happen? Let's see. Choice is -1. Okay, so it chose Qt 5 correctly. Okay, so that's how I have git cloned a Git repository that's written in Python. I have created a venv. I have opened the Python project in the integrated development environment for Python PyCharm Community. Then I am debugging the entry point file, which is this setup/craft bootstrap.py. This requires a command line parameter, which we could provide by creating a debugger configuration, which looks like this. So it found the venv and it respected it automatically. I've selected the Python file, that's the entry point, and then I provided the script parameters, command line parameters. The rest of the integrated development environment amenities that you would expect are available. There's go to definition, there's find usages, there's very rich source code analysis, static analysis, grammar checks, proofreading, etc. There's this list of errors. There's PEP8 validation. There's whole project validation, so showing all of the problems in this Python project. So in problems Alt6, project errors, no errors found by the IDE inspect code, whole project, inspection profile, we leave it at default, we go analyze, and it always finds thousands of issues. It's probably going to be tens of thousands of issues this time. Not 2,179. Not all of them are correct. Some are false negatives or false positives. Some of them are not that important, so you do your own validation. Let's see, one grammar. This is a internal recipe, so you should use an. This is an internal recipe. There's easy ways of, it shows you 2000 errors. Some of them are immediately actionable, and you can create Git commits which fix some of these issues. Okay. There's validations for PEP8, such as this one, where it says that class names should use Pascal capitalization. Module level import not at top of file. It suggests that you place 2 empty lines, also conformant to PEP8. It most importantly helps you with Python type hints. Let's now see the support for Python in Visual Studio Code. Stop the debugger. Let's close this thing. Let's start with a wow, it created the craft directory in the wrong place. Let's start with a fresh venv. So Python 3 minus mvenv space dot venv. Okay, let's open Visual Studio Code in here with a space code and then the current directory, which is the dot. Okay, so it opens, in my case, this directory as Visual Studio Code does. I mostly use it for opening directories because it still doesn't have support for the Python language through a Visual Studio Code extension. So go to the extensions tool window, Ctrl-Shift-X, and let's see what's recommended for our source code base. So it wants XML tools. We actually want this guy. So Python extension from Microsoft, and the identifier is this one, ms-python.python. Latest version. Let's install. So it says that it will install IntelliSense PyLens. So this is auto-completion. This thing. And then linting a debugger, so debug adapter protocol, code formatting, etc. Okay. At this point, it would be a good idea to follow the tutorial for Python and Visual Studio Code and learn the features of the combination of Visual Studio Code plus the extension for Python, which would be this one. So you go VS Code Python in Google and start following the tutorials. Okay, let's see if we can manage to do similar things that we did in PyCharm inside of Visual Studio Code plus the Python extension from Microsoft without actually reading the documentation. Okay, so this is the Explorer Ctrl-Shift-E tool window, tool view. We want to go to the entry point, which is in the directory setup, the file craft bootstrap.py. Let's look at the outline. Let's collapse the class craft bootstrap and the 4 top level functions, free functions. Do the same in the text editor window. Okay, let's try to put breakpoints in the same places that as we did in PyCharm Community. And now let's try to run this thing. So the tab run and debug. Run and debug. Python file. Okay, so again, we've just started the debugger telling it, here is the Python file that I want you to start from. It used correctly the .venv hidden directory. We see how it ran the correct command line, which is source and then .venv being activate. And then from there, it finds the Python and PIP executables. Okay. Let's see the shortcuts for the debugger. At the top, so continue F5, step over F10, step into F11, step out, Shift F11. Okay, so we need to step over F10. Let's step over a number of times. Again, we see that we need to specify the prefix. Okay, and the debugger support works correctly. Let's now advance where we specify the prefix. So we go create a launch JSON file, Python file, and we'll need to specify after the program also the arguments. So that's args, and the arguments look like this. There's two arguments, and args is an array, probably like this. Okay, and then these command line parameters are irrelevant to any other Python file than craft bootstrap. So we need to specify that we always want to start from the file craft bootstrap. Otherwise, it will start from the file that's currently open in the text editor in the current tab, which we do not want. For that, we need the variable for the workspace. For that, we'll search on Google for VS Code debugger variables. Takes you to the webpage for debugging in Visual Studio Code. And in here, we're looking for a list of variables that you can use inside of this configuration file, which is named launch.json. So we can immediately see that there's a variable named workspace folder with lowercase w and uppercase f, which is the one that we want. In here, in this screenshot also, let's see where they are defined. Okay, says variable substitution, for example, $, and between curly brackets workspace folder gives the root path of the workspace folder, so the directory that I have opened in using Visual Studio Code. And then $, and then between curly brackets file is the file open in the active editor, so the file that you have in the current tab. So what we want is something similar to what's in here. Relative path for program. And the name is this one. Copy relative path. Control V. So workspace folder setup, craft, bootstrap, PY, correct parameters. And this seems to be okay. And now we need to start the debugger by going to run and debug Ctrl-Shift-D tool window, tool view, and press the start debugging F5 button. We can see in the terminal the correct command line being used for starting the Python process with the correct parameters prefix and then ~/craft root with the correct full path to the file. Okay, so step over F10, We have all of the local variables. We have global variables, call stack, the amenities of a debugger, list of breakpoints. Okay, so this is just configuring the parser library. I cannot step into this place using F11. I'm not sure why, but go to definition seems to work okay. So control click on any identifier goes to the correct place, which is /usr/lib/python 3.11 argparse_py, the correct class argument parser, and the correct method parse args. Okay. Step into is F11, F10, F11 step into. Okay, this is our source code. Make directories if needed, and the directory is correct. Welcome to the craft setup wizard. Okay. It creates this prompt for choice. I didn't press F11 to step into the method, which I wanted, but I somehow missed. Let's use the pause of the debugger. So the pause button F6. Let's see where the debugger is right now. We cannot pause because it's waiting for input. So I'm going to try to blindly find the place where it does input. This probably is the place. Yeah, I'm going to press enter again. It stopped at the breakpoint exactly where I thought it would, on line 91. Okay, so choice is nothing. We can see it in here in the locals. It tries to convert it to int, which will fail. Choice as integer is -1, and empty is instance. What is this thing? So this is tilde/VS Code. So this is my current directory, my home directory, and in there the extensions are installed per user. The extension pylance, and this is additional type hints for the standard library, which is really important to see. Okay, step into doesn't do anything. F10, it's going to return the value 5 because why? 0 and 1. Key equals default. I missed where it did what. Choices. So there was an array, a list, choices, this thing, that had on first position Qt 5, on the second position Qt 6, It's of course 0 index on position 0 and 1. So it shows the default value. Okay, next, F10. Get ABI. Wrong capitalization. Okay, so I'm not sure how to validate the compliance to the Python coding guidelines PEP8. It should complain that this doesn't look like all lowercase characters separated by underscores or method names, for free function names. And the same for isWin. So this is kind of like a Java naming convention for identifiers, including local variables, which is not a problem. That's what this project has chosen to adhere to, and that's okay. IsWin. OS name is POSIX, not NT. Okay. A static method. PyCharm warns you if your method that's part of a class does not use any state from the object, suggests that you make it a static method. Is it Mac? If it's Darwin, and it's let's see if we can put breakpoints in. Breakpoint was excluded by the filter just my code. You can put just my code, make it false. This will allow you to debug the Python source code library. And this configuration should be done in launch.json. So just my code and make it false. Let's see how that works. Launch.json, just my code true, false, Control S, start it directly, and go to the next breakpoint. Let's see in platform.py, we have breakpoint here. Asks if I want Qt5. Yes, I want. Continue F5. And it's inside of the Python source code, Python standard library. Step into. And can step into uname. Wow. So much transparency with full source code available. Reminds me of Pascal and Turbo Pascal and Borland Delphi. Okay. So the debugger has all of the features that I require. Go to navigation is really correct, works correctly. Navigating back works correctly, but with the wrong shortcut. Should be Alt left, the same as in web browsers, but it's not. And then the good features of Visual Studio Code that I usually use, which is Ctrl Shift F for searching in the entire directory that's open in Visual Studio Code. Ctrl-Shift-H to replace in the entire directory. Again, we saw navigating source code files. We saw that it can show the outline of the Python file. PyCharm remembers the last project that I had opened, so I can reopen PyCharm as many times as I want. It will still do the correct thing. Let's see if Visual Studio does remember. And it does. Okay, that's feature parity there. Okay, so project view versus explorer tool view, structure tool view versus outline. In craft bootstrap this. Okay, the outline in Visual Studio Code also shows the local variables by default. Which is not really needed. I don't really feel the need to navigate to what are these? So in the function run, there's args, which is a parameter, command parameter, and then all of the local variables. That's an interesting feature. Okay, collapse all. How do we collapse all in here? Collapse all, so the 3 vertical dots. Let's see if we can start the debugger at the same time. One button click. Let's minimize the left hand side tool views. Debugger, go. In here we cannot really collapse because in the left hand tool view there's the debug features. Let's collapse it anyhow. Okay. The terminal, which can also input text from using the input function, built-in function from Python, for instance. Not all terminals are capable of such feats. Okay, let's see what they say. So it's the Python debugger. The command lines that they use in order to start the debugger is different. PyCharm has support for the Qt framework. This is probably a TCP port, and this is also probably a TCP port. Okay, so let's go to where? To the function is Unix. How do we find this thing? Ctrl-Shift-F is Unix. respect match case and match whole word. And in the file craft bootstrap, this guy. Okay, put a breakpoint in here. Let's go with a debugger there. Asks if I want Qt5. Delete this breakpoint. Go. Okay. Now, where is it? I'm not sure. In threads and variables, we can see that we stopped at the first breakpoint on line 13. Let's resume. Delete also this breakpoint. Resume. Okay. What does it want from me now? So you need to make the console view a bit taller. Let's rerun. Okay, and now we can see where it asks. I can press enter and it pauses on line 41. So both debuggers are paused on line 41. We can see the threads and call stack. There's just one thread, main thread. The shortcuts are of course different. The PyCharm uses the usual shortcuts for the JetBrains integrated development environment. So step over F8, step into F7, step out Shift F8, resume F9. Whereas Visual Studio Code uses shortcuts which are similar to the ones from Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code. So continue F5, step over F10, step into F11, step out Shift F11, and stop Shift F5. And we can run without the debugger, Control F5. Let's see how that works. Stop the debugger. How can we run without a debugger? Let's see. Run without debugging. And it uses the correct configuration, uses the correct command line parameters. Let's do the same thing in PyCharm. So I'm not pressing the debug craft bootstrap shift F9 button, but I'm pressing the run craft bootstrap shift F10 button. Again, it's using the correct command line parameter, and they both stopped at the same place. Okay, I can press enter in here and enter in here. So both PyCharm Community and Visual Studio Code plus the Python extension from Microsoft are tools. Both of these integrated development environments for Python are tools. They are available for you to use. You could use one of them, you could use both of them. It's up to you. It's not necessarily a competition. You can use any. So good luck programming in Python using these two integrated development environments. Thank you.